As Daniel Pink said, people fail to achieve mastery not because they aren't talented, but because they aren't disciplined. The wonderful news about the human condition is you can get good at anything that you set your mind to. It's just not going to be easy, and it's not going to be fast. But the willingness to put in that work is what's going to separate you from everybody else. And I'm begging you to see yourself right now, today, as average, as no better than anyone else. But I beg you, with more force than I know how to convey with this language, to see yourself as malleable, to see yourself as capable of becoming anything you want to become truly extraordinary, if you can find within yourself the discipline to stick with it long enough. And as Steve Martin said, perseverance is a great substitute for talent. Everybody wants to talk about who's talented. Everybody looks at the person with innate talent as if they have something magical. But to me, it's a gift, it's a handout, it's a freebie. It hasn't been earned. And no matter what it is, it's only the beginning. Even somebody that has talent, even if you get an early win, if you let somebody outwork you, if you let somebody who has more perseverance, more grit than you, then they are going to outperform you on a long enough timeline. The only thing I can guarantee is you will be outworked by somebody unless you pour your heart and soul into getting great. If you don't take days off, if you put yourself into it as if your life depended on it, when you act like that, then you've got a chance to be great. And as Robert Horry said, pressure can bust pipes, but it can also make diamonds. You've got to want that pressure. You've got to want things to be hard. You can't seek out the easy life. You can't just hope and pray that you can uncover inside of you some talent that's laid dormant that you didn't know about that's going to let things be easy for you. Don't want the easy. Want the hard. Want the pressure. Want the thing that's going to turn you into something. Because when it's easy, you don't work for it. When it's easy, you don't push. When it's easy, you get surpassed by the person who has to give it their all, who's prepared to do blood, sweat, and tears in order to become that thing that they want to be so badly because they are so angry that they were never given anything. And with that chip on their shoulder, they're determined to become anything that they set their mind to. So whether you have talent, whether you don't, the only thing that matters is, will you persevere? Will you stick with it long enough to get great?
Need motivation? Watch a Top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more. And you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Tom Bilyeu, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Rule number 2, enjoy the process.
Some things you build whether you can control the outcome or not. Sometimes it's the process that is the thing that's meant to be enjoyed. It's the process that you're meant to invest in. And rather than always thinking about the goal, the outcome, or what you're going to get out of something, focus on the something. Focus on the part of it that you can control, because you can't always control the outcome. You can't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Tomorrow's not guaranteed to any of us, and yet we all act. And yet we create momentum in our lives when we're at our best. But we do that not because we can control every aspect. We do that because we accept that there are things that we cannot control. And as Steve Maraboli said, incredible change happens in your life when you decide to take control of what you do have power over, instead of craving control over what you don't. And that's where a lot of people get lost. They focus not on what they have in their hands, they focus instead on the things that they can't control. It irritates them, it frustrates them, it's like a splinter in their mind. They can't stop thinking about the things that they don't have control over. And they're blinded to the incredible wealth that is around them of things that they could enjoy right here, right now. That's why gratitude is such an empowering practice, to sit there and not think of the glorious things that may await you in your future, but rather to think about the things that you have here in this moment. Oxygen in your lungs, a simple breeze on your face, a window in your house, someone that you love, someone that loves you. Nothing that costs money, nothing that was the pot of gold at the end of a glorious rainbow. It's not even about becoming something extraordinary and waiting for the results of that. It's simply understanding that the one thing you can control are your actions today, the choices that you make, what you get to do, how you think about yourself, the beliefs you choose to bring into your life. Those things you control. And when you understand the power in acknowledging that control and taking control and using it, that's when your life is going to begin to change. But first, you have to divorce yourself from being obsessively interested only in an outcome. If instead you build your self-esteem, you build your pride on pursuit. You build your pride on allowing yourself to care about something so deeply that even though tomorrow is not guaranteed, that you're going to plant your apple tree today, that you're going to love that process because it is the thing that you can control. You can control how you show up. You can control how you play. You cannot control how other people react. You cannot control what they think about you, but you can control what you think about yourself.
Rule number 3, believe in yourself.
Everyone takes the limits of their own vision for the limits of the world. Arthur Schopenhauer. There is all around you right now the reflections of your world belief. They're so ever present that you don't even see them. All the assumption that you've made about the world, the things that are possible, what you're capable of, who you are, the very definition of what it means to be alive, all of it is completely invisible. And you're mistaking what you have for what could be. And once you break free of that, once you understand that right now you're a moment in time and that you have latent potential, and that latent potential can be expressed in the form of skills, that you can get good at things, that you can develop yourself in any direction, that brain plasticity alone is one of the greatest weapons that you're not using. But you have to move beyond what you can perceive today. You have to begin to look beyond that and see that which doesn't yet exist. And you have to remember that many of the things that are holding you down are rules that you don't even realize are rules. And as General Douglas MacArthur said, you're remembered for the rules you break. And right now, you're following rules that you don't even realize exist. And some of those rules are simply what is okay to dream. But I'm here to tell you, the power is in recognizing that you can do it. The power is in having the arrogance of belief. The power is in understanding that you, yes, you are going to be capable of something simply because you are willing to believe in yourself. And that's the thing, it's a willingness to believe in yourself. No one's going to give it to you. Even the people that love you, they're not going to give you that. They are incapable of giving it to you. People cannot see past their limitations, and they take them for truth. People actually believe the things that have stopped them will forever not only stop them, but they will stop other people. How can they hope to give you anything but limitation? So if you know that even the people that love you, what they're handing you is limitation with the best of intentions, with all the love in the world, how are you going to break out of that? How are you going to break past those rules? How are you going to fight the anxiety that inevitably comes your way when you think about going against the grain? But my friends, until you can do that, you can never get beyond the bullshit that limits you. If people said gravity is what it is, we never would have reached escape velocity. And yet, as a species, we have been able to hurl a rocket into space, get it outside of gravity, take us to other planets. That is real only because somebody said, I refuse to be held down by the most obvious rule that we have, the one that everybody says is beyond reproach, and that is gravity. But even gravity will break under the weight of a superior will. So recognize, as Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Can you be content to be thought foolish and stupid? Or do you allow yourself to be caged, to be hemmed in by what other people think? And look, I get it. I understand the sting of contempt. I understand how much it sucks when someone you respect doesn't respect you. But you cannot be anything more than their captive if you think about what they think about you. If you let yourself be defined by what other people perceive of as you, then you will forever be limited by what they give you permission to do. And I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, I said, when I'm an adult, I will never be told what to do again. I will never be held back by somebody else. I will define myself. I will figure out what I need to do, and I will do it. And at the end of the day, that is it. My goals drive my behavior. I am not held back by what other people think about me, no matter how intoxicating it is to be loved. You have to decide what you want more. Do you want to be you, or do you want to be someone else's reflection of you?
Rule number 4, look for the positive.
Everything around you is incredible if you're willing to look at it that way. Everything around you can be taken for granted if that's your perspective. But it really is about the frame that you choose to put around things. I mean, simply being alive is already insane. The odds are so stacked against you, not only just being a human, but being a human at this moment in time. This moment in time where breakthroughs in technology are happening at an unprecedented rate, where breakthroughs in medical science are happening at an unprecedented rate, where our ability to connect with people, to empathize with people all the way around the globe, all of the changes that have happened in technology and telecom and connectivity, health, everything. We're living in the most miraculous time ever. But you have to look at it that way. And as Joseph Campbell said, life is a wonderful, wonderful opera, except that it hurts. So the question is, do you see it as the beautiful opera? Or do you just pay attention to the pain? And at the end of the day, you're gonna get what you focus on. They're both true. This is both the most amazing time that's ever happened ever in recorded history. And yet real things that are terrifying are also happening. But where you put your energy, where you put your attention, where you put your focus is going to determine what you see. And that is the most fascinating and the most important thing you have to understand about the way that your mind works. You get what you focus on. If you focus on the things that are bad, they will become real. They will become exaggerated. They will begin to monopolize your thoughts. You'll see them everywhere. It's called the reticular activating system. Your mind is literally designed to pay attention to the things that you notice. Once you notice a certain car, you see it everywhere. Once you notice a certain dog, you see it everywhere. Once you hear a certain name for the first time, suddenly you realize that that name has been all around you this entire time. But now that you're focusing on it, now that you're looking for it, it is everywhere. So whatever you look for, it's going to be everywhere. If you look for the negative, it'll be there. But if you look for the positive, it will overwhelm you.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5, get started on your ideas.
Step number 1 to accomplishing whatever it is that you want to do is actually getting started. And I understand, I know the thing that holds you back. I know the thing that is absolutely paralyzing for people is you don't think that you have what it takes to go out and be good. And rather than face that difficult, brutal process of growing and getting better, and quite frankly, facing your inadequacies, it's easier just to sit back. But as John Wooden said, never let what you cannot do interfere with what you can. There is something right now that you're capable of. There is an innate skill inside of you that's your spark. It's that starting point. It's that thing that while you may not be the best in the world at it, it's a flame that you can fan. It's something that you can breathe life into and really begin to get good. But first you have to understand the very nature of progress. And that's as Stephen Covey said. You're not the product of your circumstances, but rather a product of your decisions. And it's those decisions that are going to allow you to build that skill set. So don't worry about where you started. Don't worry about what you already have. Remember, it's the decisions that you make. It's going down that road. It is the decision to get started. It's the decision to face possible failure. It's the decision to get up once you failed. And it's the decision of what to learn when you fail. Do you learn that you're not good enough? Do you learn that you never should have tried? Or do you learn a lesson from the failure and get up and brush yourself off and remember that at the end of the day, you're going to go as far as you're willing to fight for, and that's it. And if you're willing to fight to go all the way, then you will go that far. You will set a new bar. You will define for people what is possible. You become that beacon of hope. You become that thing that other people look to as the standard. But at the end of the day, it started with you getting started. It started with you showing up. It started with you pushing and trying. So get out there. Don't worry about what you have and what you are. Focus on who you want to become and the price you're willing to pay to get there.
Rule number 6, pursue what matters.
As Václav Havel said, work for something because it is good, not just because it stands a chance to succeed. And this is something that I think a lot of people misunderstand. They think that the goal of their life is to identify something that'll work, to identify something that has the odds stacked in its favor, rather than to think about what matters, what's important. Because if something is important, if it speaks to you, if it's going to give resonance to your life, then it's worth doing, even if it's something that is almost guaranteed to fail. When something matters enough, regardless of the odds, it's worth engaging with, because even in the pursuit, you can find meaning. And as humans, one of the things that we hunger for most is purpose and meaning, but you can't have that purpose and meaning without the thing that you're pursuing be something that you believe to be worthwhile. So don't worry about whether or not it succeeds. Ask only about whether or not it's going to light you on fire. Ask only if in those dark moments that it will give you that sense of mattering to this world, that even in the failure, do you learn something about yourself? Do you see the truth that you matter, and that even as a single person, even as one individual, you can echo through this world. But that will never happen by pursuing something small. That will never happen by pursuing something simply because it can win. It will only happen by pursuing something that matters. And in that, if you pursue something that matters and you're able to get to the point where you can see it across the finish line, or at least advance it and make it a step closer to becoming real, in that we realize how societies really are transformed. In that, and trying the big, the impossible, dreaming that thing that nobody else is even willing to talk about. In dreaming that, it is the crazy ones who are able to change the world, because the crazy ones allowed themselves to believe. They allowed themselves to believe that against all the odds, a world that does not yet exist could actually exist. And as Ralph Marsden said, welcome those big, sticky, complicated problems. In them are your most powerful opportunities, and that's it. The big problems, the ones that matter, the things that will give you purpose and meaning in your life, they're going to be hard. But if you can look at the hard things and show up and push every day and keep striving, and when you fall down, pick yourself back up and focus only on one thing, not whether or not you're going to win, but whether or not it mattered that you played. If you do that, every sacrifice in your life will be worth it. And if not, nothing you gain will have mattered.
Rule number 7, know your why.
This is why Jocko Willink says discipline is freedom. When you know, I don't go outside of these lines. I don't break these rules. These rules are hard and fast. They are bright lines. Now, there's no, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. It's like me and getting out of bed in 10 minutes or less. I never want to. Every single day, literally every day of my life, my brain is kicking up excuses. Why today I shouldn't have to get out of bed in 10 minutes or less. Even I am startled that after I've been doing this now for more than 20 years, even 20 years in, I still have to fight every day. But I have bright lines, so there's no excuse. So literally when I think, oh, well, today you don't have to for XYZ reasons, my conscious mind, I've repeated it so many times, is this is a bright line. There are no excuses. There is no reason. There is no if, ands, or buts. You get out of bed in 10 minutes or less, full stop, period, end of story. And so therefore I get out of bed. But you have to know what you're striving for. You have to know why you're doing all of this, why you're putting in all these rules. And it has to be something you're actually interested in, you're actually excited about. Otherwise, why? Why are you limiting your life like this? Why are you narrowing things down? Okay, why not go get the dopamine hit from the fridge? You have to have a reason, right? You've got to know why you eat a certain way or don't eat a certain way. You've got to know why you're working this hard. You've got to know why you push through the difficult things. Okay, Nietzsche's quote, the person with the right why can survive almost any how. Okay, but you have to know what your why is. You've got to know why you're pushing through all this stuff. But once you have that, you'll be able to slap some rules on this and get to the other side.
Rule number 8, attempt the impossible.
As Thomas Edison said, our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is to always try one more time. I know there are going to be a million times in your life where you want to give up, where you absolutely ache with the desire to quit, where nothing sits inside of your gut other than the certainty that you are going to fail, that you are not good enough to push forward. But that is to fundamentally misunderstand the nature of a failure. The nature of a failure is not to tell you who you are. The nature of a failure is to tell you a way that didn't work. It's to inform, it's to educate you, it's to test you. It's to be a gut check to find out if you believe in yourself enough to push forward even when the world seems to be telling you not to. And as Brian Tracy said, attempt the impossible in order to improve your work. Think about that for a second. Attempt the impossible just to get better, to try the things that you know are going to fail, things that the world is going to tell you simply cannot be. But even if it violates the laws of physics, if there's something in that attempt that you're going to learn, you owe it to yourself. You have a moral obligation to try. Because all of the people that will lie in your wake are the people that didn't try simply because they didn't believe that they could do it. You have to be willing to look at the world. You have to be willing to see things that you yourself think are impossible and try, because in that you will stretch yourself. You have to be willing to look inward at the state of your current skill set and say, I'm going to play outside of that. I'm not going to play where it's safe. I'm going to play where it hurts. I'm going to play where I feel clumsy. I'm going to play only in the areas that make me feel stupid, because in that I know that the way that the brain responds is through adaptation, but I have to stress myself. You can't ever lose sight of that. The only way that the human animal adapts is through stress. You have to be willing to break things in order to build something new. So if you want to push the boundaries, if you want to see just how far you can go, if you want to succeed at the highest level, if you want to play on a global scale, you have got to be willing to try the impossible, because right now, the things that you need to do are impossible for you. But they won't remain that way forever. And as Aristotle said, pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work. This doesn't have to be a tale of always being terrified. Everybody, myself included, screaming at you, telling you that you need to go do something great. The part they're leaving out is why the f should you care? You should care because it's the greatest joy. You should only listen to this if it's leading you down a path that makes you feel more alive, and that's the point. The point is to get in touch with something that makes you feel great, but not to let yourself starve or be stopped by a fear that you'll fail, by a fear that it can't be done. Have fun. Have the guts to enjoy yourself. Have the guts to go out and attempt something audacious and terrifying, knowing that all along, if you're doing it right, you're gonna have a good time. So all of this, going balls out, trying to prove something to yourself, trying to do something amazing, never lose sight that it's to build a better life. Never lose sight of the fact that you're doing it to create the person that you want to be. Never lose sight of the fact that it should be fun.
Rule number 9, always be learning.
The most powerful weapon that you're going to have at your disposal isn't a gun, it isn't a sword, it isn't a bomb. The most powerful weapon you will ever have at your disposal, if you really want to make change, is knowledge. It doesn't mean going to school. It can be books, it can be a mentor, it can be somebody else's failure, it can be your own failure. But whatever it is, to always be learning, to be learning something today, knowing that that's an investment. And as Robert Louis Stevenson said, don't judge each day by the harvest you reap, but rather by the seeds you plant. And that's what knowledge is. That's what the learning process is you're learning something today that you may not even understand how it's going to be valuable. But one day, that piece of knowledge is going to come to your aid. One day, that thing that you learned is going to be something that you're going to lean on. One day, that thing that you've worked your ass off to understand better than anybody else in the world, it's going to help you change the world. But you have to be doing it now. You have to be learning with an obsession. You have to understand that ideas in equal ideas out, and that you have to chase that knowledge down, that it is a relentless pursuit, and that like you would build an armada, like you would create a stockpile of weapons, you must create a stockpile of knowledge. You must learn and learn and learn, and you must hold yourself accountable every day to planting those seeds, to getting better, to learning more, to understanding things more broadly. When you do that, there will be nothing that won't be unlocked to you. That's what I want you guys to understand. It doesn't matter where you are now. It doesn't matter where you started, your circumstances, the money, the people that you know. None of it matters. What matters is how much are you willing to learn? How good are you willing to get? How much knowledge are you willing to soak in? Because that will become your weapon. That will be how you rise up, and that will be the thing that will protect you when you need it most.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is be unique.
As Zen Shi says, a flower does not think about competing with the flower next to it. It just blooms. And that's really your job, is to see the outside world, to see the flower next to you, to understand the amazing things that are happening all around you, all of the incredible people and the essence of what they have, and what it is that they've done to bring inside yourself, and find out what does that look like when it's me. Not what do I look like when I'm them. And once you understand the difference between that, then you can really begin to be something unique. You can become that thing that you were meant to be, that thing that makes you feel alive and whole. And that's it. That's the secret. You're just trying to be something, not that's just inspiring to other people, but that you actually want to wake up every day and be. And that's the thing about it. There's no escaping you. Whatever you become, a lie, the truth, somebody else, yourself, whatever it is, you're going to spend every day of your life there.
Does a negative mindset have more effects on mental health and the brain? And does it get easier to control your emotions if you try long enough? So first of all, yes, a negative mindset is going to have an overall impact on your mental health. So anxiety is the easiest one to talk about because I've experienced it, but I think depression is also going to be hugely affected by what you allow yourself to repeat. So one core mechanism of the brain is to understand that while we are a very active species that's meant to go out and explore and master our environment, there's a secondary evolutionary force pushing on us, which is that we also want to conserve calories to make sure that we survive a famine. So we have this dual competing thing of wanting to go out and do cool, hence the big dreams, and wanting to sit on the couch and eat a bag of potato chips. Hence why we procrastinate, why we feel lazy. And the way that the brain, as a physiological organ, has dealt with this dual impulse challenge over evolutionary timeframes is that it's a process called myelination. And what that does is it's wrapping fatty tissue around neurons that fire together at the same time frequently. So this is why they say neurons that fire together wire together. They are literally getting optimized for the efficient transmission of these signals across those synaptic gaps. And the reason that they do this is that it becomes easier from a caloric perspective to do those things. So now you've made whatever you repeat, whether it's something empowering or disempowering, whether it's something that makes you anxious or feel like you can do anything, it's going to make thinking those thoughts and feeling those feelings easier from a caloric perspective. It also begins to move it into what's called the default mode network. So the default mode network is responsible for anything that we'll call automatic thinking. If you've done something a bazillion times, you don't think about brushing your teeth, you just brush your teeth. You don't think about driving to work oftentimes. Certainly before the pandemic, you just drive to work. And there were times where you would show up at work and be like, whoa, I almost don't remember the journey getting here. And the reason is that what ends up happening is your cognition can be put onto basically something else. So you're thinking through, daydreaming, whatever. And the thing that you do in a repetitive way is just happening automatically, super efficiently. And it's a thing that happens to the brain where you can scan somebody and go, they're in the default mode network right now. And if worry, anxiety, panic, fear, stress, if that's what you're doing all the time, then that's what's going to be moved over made calorically easier to do, moved into the default mode network so that by default, that's where you go. And this is where most people spend the majority of their lives, is living in that default mode network of these emotions that they've created, these very well-worn paths to looping around over and over, to feeling those feelings over and over. And so you can understand, since the body responds to the mental states that you're constantly in, that each of those mental states is characterized by hormonal and neurochemical states, and the body will have different long-term consequences based on what you're feeling. So for instance, if you are constantly stressed or constantly anxious, your cortisol levels are extraordinarily high. Cortisol levels begin to damage the elasticity of your blood vessels. Is one of the vectors of attack on your body. And so you don't want to stay in these chronically elevated levels because it deteriorates the integrity of the lining of your blood vessels. And this is the kind of thing that leads to stroke or coronary heart disease. So being incredibly thoughtful, not to loop on those things, which doesn't mean that there aren't bad things going on in your life, but it does mean that when you allow yourself to loop, that there is this hormonal and chemical cascade as a response to that your body will have negative consequences to, or positive consequences if you're in a loving, calm state a lot. And that's the thing that becomes the default mode network. That becomes the easiest thing for you to think. And you're in this really calm and creative state a lot of times, then you're going to prolong your life.
There's a part in Fight Club, and the gift that I would like to give the world, if I had, which I did not, but if I had sat down and set my intention for, what do I want to convey? This is one of my top 5 things that I want to get across to people if you really want to succeed.
Yeah.
There's a moment in Fight Club where he puts his hand out and the guy puts a caustic solution on the back of his hand and it burns. And he tells him that he has to just leave it there. And he ends up holding his hand down so that he can't take it away at first because it hurts so badly. And then finally he releases and the guy has the strength to leave his hand there and let it just burn. And what I'm saying is you have a mechanism in your mind called the psychological immune system. Its job is to get you to pull your hand away, to wash off the thing that burns, and hey, you're fine again.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is if you want to be great, the burning sensation is you having to accept that you fucked something up, that you're not as good as you want to be, that there are people that are better than you, that you're not as far along in the journey as you want to be. And what you have to learn how to do, if you want to be great, you have to learn to let it burn. And even though your impulse is going to be to turn away from that, to not look at it, to soothe it by saying it's them, it's their fault, they fucked it up, I grew up in the wrong place, it's fine for them, they're wealthy. Whatever excuse you use to try to let yourself off the hook for not being where you want to be, instead of saying, actually, the power is the ability to let it burn. And one of my employees was just asking me yesterday, and he said, how do you not get overwhelmed? And I said, you want to know the God's honest truth? The second I feel that impulse, Brendan, I say to myself, you don't get overwhelmed. I'm not going to back down. I will not break. You cannot break me. Get that shit out of your head right now. And just interrupting that thought with an aggressive impulse of I'm going to let it burn. Now, I'm not a moron, so I immediately go, hey, thank you, psychology, for letting me know that, there's a lot of things coming at me right now. So I'm going to go meditate. But the way that I interrupt the thought is by reminding myself not to be weak.
Who's in control?
100%.
Who's in control? Is overwhelm in control or are you in control?
They once gave me a list, it was 750,000 keywords, and I had to comb through it in an Excel spreadsheet and say either yes or no. That took days and days and days of mind-numbing yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no.
What do you mean 750,000
Because this was
words?
back in so we had words that did we want to advertise on? Do we want to advertise on these keywords? So you would buy a list of powerful keywords on Google, and this is all CPC stuff.
Got it.
So do we want to show up on these keywords, yes or no? Here's our business, you know what we're doing, what keywords would we want to show up on? And so I'd have to go and clean the list. There's no way, no AI to comb through it for us. So I would do that. So anything like that, where I just add value, and everyone starts gravitating towards the person who's always upbeat, great energy, and never says no, and is always asking how they can help. It is a formula that will win for all time. And so that was it. And I just threw that intensity at it, because every day I was like, I'm here to get rich. I'm here to get rich. And when I get rich, I'm gonna go build my studio. If you wanna make a change, you have to change your vision of who you are. You have to begin telling yourself a different narrative. And the narrative you tell yourself about yourself is everything. And if you tell yourself that you're a scared, undereducated kid from Tacoma whose family has never accomplished anything, let me tell you what you will become. A scared, undereducated kid from Tacoma who never accomplishes anything, because that's what you believe. You tell yourself that story enough, and it will become real. But on the flip side, you could tell yourself a story of you're a learner. You learn faster than most people. You're willing to put in more work than most people. You're willing to read more books than most people. You're willing to spend an inhuman amount of time every day improving your mind simply by getting new ideas into the system. And that you will admit that you're wrong faster than anybody else, that you won't let your ego get in the way. And you tell yourself that story over and over and over. So when somebody comes and tells you how stupid you are, that you're just a dumb kid from Tacoma, you go, you're right, that's amazing. Thank you for pointing out that flaw, because now that I'm aware of it, I can improve it, because I'm the learner. And once I switched my narrative to being the learner, it didn't matter where I started, it only mattered where I was trying to go. And as long as I had that clarity, then I could execute, because I believed I could do anything I set my mind to without limitation. When you look at somebody with money, especially when you don't have it, you admire them. And so you think, if I had money, I would admire myself. But it doesn't work like that. So once you get the money, the thing you thought would happen to yourself, the story about who you are, you think is gonna change, and it doesn't. So that's when people become totally disillusioned. They think, if I have the Ferrari, I'll think differently about myself. If I have the house, I'll think differently about myself. Your insecurities are coming with you wherever you go. So if you think anything external is gonna change that, the only thing that changes your insecurities, show up in the gym. Put in the effort, go to work, do the things, suffer in service of somebody else, do something to bring beautiful things to people that you love and care about, do something beautiful to bring something to somebody you've never even met. Those things will change your story. For 8.5 years, I'm doing that. I am working 7 days a week, ignoring my wife. At about the 6.5 year mark, my wife pulls me aside and says, you're now damaging our marriage, and I'm not willing to continue like this. So I was like, all right, something's got to give. And that forced me to really look and say, I'm profoundly unhappy, and showing up every day chasing money just isn't actually who I am. And I need to do something that makes me feel alive in the moment. So it ends up being a cool part of my story, but what I want people to know is when the following thing happened, I was awash in shame. And so there I was, the guy going hard. By this point, I've worked my way up now. I'm the chief marketing officer of the company. I own 10% of it, all just through sweat equity. They made good on their promise. And I was so broken inside and so unhappy that I was like, I have to leave. I need to go back to filmmaking. I need to do something that in and of itself, like, I will love and be passionate about. And what I realized was the struggle is guaranteed, the success is not. Now, at that time, I was a multimillionaire on paper, but as you well know, being rich on paper is very different than having money in your bank account.
No doubt about it.
So I was rich on paper, I did not feel rich, and so I was like, what am I doing all of this for? So my wife and I talk, and I'm like, look, I know I promised I would make you rich, and I swear to God I will one day, but I'm gonna have to take a step backwards first, because I can't just muscle through like this. I'm just losing so many years of my life. I need to do something that if I'm gonna fail, at least I'm gonna fail loving what I'm doing. She was totally behind me. She said what are now famous words in our marriage. She said, I bet on you. I was like, that means a lot. So I go in and I quit. And I said, look, here's your equity back. I'm not gonna cross the finish line, so I don't think I should get anything for this. So, take it and do your thing. And I'm gonna go to Greece. We were gonna move to Greece, and I'm gonna write, and that's that. And they said, look, we could do this without you, but we don't want to. And so what would it take for us to keep working together? And I laid out a plan of, if whatever I'm gonna be doing next, it's gotta be around value creation, it's gotta be around passion, it's got to be something that we would love every day, even if we were failing. I want to build community. I want to be myself. And I said, look, this thing that we now call social media, wasn't called that back then, but social media, I think is going to change everything.
What year is that?
This is 2009.
Okay.
So I'm like, I think this is going to change everything, going to change the way that people do business. And actually, this probably was a little bit earlier than that. So the next company, I want to be transparent. I want our real personalities to shine through. I want people to see, like, we actually want good things for them. Yeah. And so that, for 3 very different reasons, became the core of what we wanted to do. And so we founded Quest Nutrition. Everyone told us we were crazy, that we were leaving technology, like the place where people actually get rich, and going into food, the place where you're in manufacturing, it's going to be small margins, you guys are never going to survive this. And so everyone thought we were dumb, but our thing was, we're never going to make decisions based on profitability again. We're going to be making it based on like actually adding value to people's lives, being passionate about what we do every day, and loving our lives. And so we actually made a promise to each of us, and we said, you're going to enjoy what you do on a day-to-day basis, simple as. And so if it's something weird, like when I started doing Inside Quest, fine. Like, even if it's not, like, we don't see the immediate ROI in the business, if you love it and that's a part of what's making you a complete and full human being, then let's do it. And so we got into really crazy stuff, but ended up being amazing because we made that promise to each other. So that was how all of that began. And then we just really lived up to it, about value creation, about not just trying to sell people on something, about building a real community to uplift people. And it just so happened that we had the right product at the right time, marketed in a totally new way. Because of my background in film, we were creating all of our own content in-house. We built an entire studio inside the company. We were shooting everything long before that was like a thing. It was like, we were doing that. And everyone was like, this is crazy.
People don't have enough rules in their life for themselves. So for instance, I get out of bed in 10 minutes or less, doesn't matter. And I don't want to. That's why I have the rule. Because
You've calloused your mind.
Literally, I went through a period where I would lay in bed for 3 to 4 hours, awash in shame at my inability to get out of bed. And it just embarrassed me. And so I felt badly about myself. So I wanted to make a change. So I knew that I needed a bright line. So bright line, 10 minutes or less, you get out of bed. As soon as you realize you're awake, that's it. So, and the rule is more specific. It's like I have to have had at least 5 hours of sleep. But once you put the rule in place, then you just live by it. And that's how you earn credibility. Like right now, I don't feel the way telling you that I want to feel. This is a good moment. He's on my team. I'm pointing at him. This is a good moment. So I'm saying this, and I don't feel good about saying it. Why? Because today, I don't know what happened. I got out of bed in 11 minutes. And I was so
You literally
pissed.
time it?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, from waking up to actually physically getting out of the bed?
Correct. My feet must be on the floor, and I must be standing up before it ticks over into the 11th minute. And today, I don't know what happened. I was aware of the time. I knew I needed to get up. And for whatever reason, one of the minutes just went faster than I thought. When I looked back, I was like, damn it. And so
I'm surprised you even made it here today then.
Right? Yeah. So now this comes into like knowing how to handle something like that. Like if you totally fall apart because you don't live up to one of your rules, you're violating another one of my rules, which is don't do anything that doesn't move you towards your goals. So it's like, yes, it is a part of my identity to confess this. So because I'm talking about it, I want to say it now to an audience. It's the only thing that will allow me to reset and be able to feel good about it again, because I don't lie. When I miss it, I own it.
Well, look, if your biggest problem is it took you 11 minutes to get out of bed,
sadly, that's not my biggest problem.
This is a high quality problem.
Right. Yes, very true. But my thing is people don't have the rules. And so I have other rules, for instance. I wear a size 32 pant. That's it. And so
no matter what your waist is.
No. I won't let my waist get out of line with that. So I use the pants as a way to guide. Now I would go down if I got so lean that I was, a 31. That's not a problem. But I'm not going to allow myself to go up. And it's super tempting, like especially around Christmas. I don't try to hold abs through the winter. So during Christmas, like right now, I do not have abs. So, and I'm totally fine with that. I switch a different part of my mentality. During the holidays, my wife and I definitely celebrate with food. And it's amazing. And I love it the most. So, but if that celebration took me up to like 32s don't fit anymore, I got to cut back because I have a rule. So it's like, that's how I keep myself in a lane. I keep myself from getting into trouble. I know the things that I accept from myself and what I don't accept from myself. And it's all like stated. It's very clear.
Self-reward and self-punishment is really, really important.
Yes.
And I think that if people don't sort of automatically have the guilty thing, which they probably do, it's more a willingness to lean into that and to say, okay, this is actually going to serve me, this is going to work for me. And I actually do wonder sometimes, as somebody who now basically has a profession of giving advice, at least on the one side of what I do,
And so I think a lot about like who should actually take my advice, because my advice is not going to lead to a carefree, easy life. Right. Lisa was just saying, she was laying in bed last night thinking about me, and she said, how the does he do it? Because there's just a level of things that I'm willing to take on, and one, I'm not even sure it's healthy for me, and two, I'm certainly not certain that it's healthy for other people. But what I do know is that I have a level of thrill and pleasurable obsession around it. So for me, it's fun. So when I think about the guilt or the momentary pain of something up, and you talk about me getting better as a speaker, it's like that journey is, it is a very simple journey that requires you, though, to really accept that you're not very good at things right now, and that's fine. And so a big key for me has always been to think of my life not through the lens of a moment. Mm-hmm. And I used to tell this to my employees all the time, like, stop judging yourself through the lens of a moment and start judging yourself through the lens of 10 years. If you think of yourself in 10-year increments, like, you will blow your mind. So if you're embarrassed today about where you are, don't compare yourself even to yesterday, which may not soothe that and encourage you to push forward. Think back 10 years. My gut instinct is, unless you've really been treading water, in which case then leverage that pain to never do that again. Yeah. But if you think back to where you were 10 years, chances are, like, you're gonna be blown away with how far you come. And so then it's like, all right, then I'm just gonna focus my gaze 10 years in the future and start saying, what would I have to do to be somewhere where I'd be blown away then with where I'm at now? Yeah. But it really does require you to say, okay, I'm the pride that I'm going to establish is actually around my willingness to look at the fact that I'm not good right now today.
If a meteorite were to strike my wife and kill her, I wouldn't blame anybody but me. That is entirely my fault. And I can back that up because people are like, Tom, that's so ridiculous. How could a meteorite striking your wife and killing her be your fault? That's dumb luck, divine providence, like fate, whatever you want to call it. But Jesus, man, it's ridiculous to blame yourself. And then I point out, I'm on the board of the X Prize. At the X Prize, there was a prize presented that would allow us to track near-Earth objects better than we are today. I voted it down. Because I don't think it matters. I don't think that the likelihood is high enough, but it's there. I know that there's an organization right now that already tracks near-Earth objects. I've never sent them a dime of my money. I've never called them to encourage them. I've never sent them an email with ideas, nothing. Now I know all of this stuff exists and I do nothing to stop it from happening. So the only thing that I can say if my wife were killed by a meteorite is I did nothing to stop it. I could have made a different decision and got a different outcome. I need to focus on that to remind myself I can always make a change. I can always do something different and get a different outcome. So if you come in and you disrupt my industry, my first thought is not, F the world, what are you doing? This is so terrible and sinister. We have to stop AI or whatever. My first reaction is, how do I become more adaptive? And people are putting so much energy into thinking like, I'm frail, I'm weak, I have to be protected, that they become frail and weak, when in reality they are not. My favorite quote on the planet is, Darwin is often misquoted as saying it's the strongest of the species that survive. He did not say that. What he actually said was, it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but rather the most adaptive to change. That's how humans became the apex predator. We are the most adaptive species on the planet. You can take us anywhere and we will thrive. And it is that ability to adapt mentally and physically that makes us amazing.
Your experience with all the, business experience that you've had, the books you've read, the people that you've spent time with, what do you think is the biggest impediment to people waking up out of this matrix-like existence that's so easy for us to fall prey to?
So I've had a realization recently that I'm not an all lanes driver. There are certain things I've spent so much time thinking about that I'm very good at answering questions, and there are certain things that I'm not. So I'll give you an answer to that question from my very specific lens, which is all about the person. Mm-hmm. So I think that if the things in the world that scare me, the divisiveness scares me. And when I think about what is the individual's creation of that divisiveness, it is, one, a desire to belong to a group intensely, a fear of being ridiculed or emotionally ostracized, and once we know that we have this like sucking need to belong, to be respected, to be liked, you can really begin to decide what are the things that you want to be liked for, respected for. And when those are things that you respect yourself for, then all of a sudden it becomes very easy to do two things: to build something that is born of connection, community, kindness. Not that you're not selfish. I'm very selfish. It just so happens that the more selfish I am, the more I like to connect and help other people. I am very much doing it for me. But it manifests in a way that is humanity neutral, worst case, and I think humanity plus ultimately. So that starts with me having a growth mindset, so that you want to see how you're wrong, that you can have these really ferocious ideas, but hold them loosely. Because the moment that your identity is wrapped up in your ideas, you are in real trouble, man. Your identity should be wrapped up in your outcome. What outcome do you want? And are you actually getting that outcome? And then as long as you're not a sociopath with an ugly outcome, like people that get into identity, politics, and things like that, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, no, for real, the world they imagine is a beautiful world for the people that they love and care about. Okay, fair enough. So I'll just give them that they're trying to do something positive. But when you look at the outcome in terms of how it affects everyone, it starts to break down pretty fast. Like, that's where it really starts to worry me. So that to me says that your identity is based on something that isn't necessarily anti-fragile. It's probably based on something pretty fragile. So to use Nassim Taleb's term, something that is fragile, that's easy to understand. Something that is anti-fragile isn't something that's strong or resilient. Those are still defined by their breaking point. It's just that their breaking point is far away. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, even something that's strong, it's strong because you think, wow, it can take a lot before it breaks. Something that's anti-fragile, on the other hand, actually grows stronger the more that it's attacked. So, and that doesn't mean you entrench in a position that clearly everybody is saying, like, this is crazy. The only anti-fragile position that I can think of is to be that of the learner. That is truly anti-fragile. So for instance, if you come at me and say that I'm stupid, I'll be like, amazing. In what way? And the reason that I say amazing is because I know that skills make me more powerful. So you've just said that I have a blind spot, which means that I'm less powerful than I could be. And I'll define power because I think it weirds some people out. To me, powerful just means you can close your eyes, imagine a world, a better world than the one that we have today. You can then open your eyes and actually create that world. So that's the kind of power that I'm trying to amass in my life, the ability to impact people at scale in a positive way. So if you're telling me that I'm less powerful than I could be, amazing. I want to know in what way, because once I'm aware of it, then I can address it, because I know about myself that I'm willing to accept that I'm inadequate, because I know that it's a temporary state. I'm not good at it yet. If I decide that it really does match with my goals and what I want to do, I can get good at it. So it's not ego damaging for you to tell me that I'm not doing something in a way that I could be better. Cool, tell me how. When people don't want to hear that, it's like, they're in a very brittle place. They're being backed into a corner, and people lash out and they're backed into a corner. So at an individual level, I would say to everybody, if you feel that, your blood boiling when somebody challenges you, if you feel like a caged animal or like you're being backed into a corner, I promise you 100%, it is not the truth of the world. It is that you have a fragile something, a fragile ego, a fragile belief system. Something in there can break. And because it can break, you're trying to protect it. And the more you try to protect it, the more hardened and potentially violent, vicious, cruel, whatever, that you may become. So when it isn't that, and you're not afraid of that thing breaking because you want to take information in, you want to assess it, doesn't mean you're going to agree. You may take that criticism and go, I actually don't think that's accurate, but I'm really grateful that you gave me that piece of information. And look, intention matters. You can tell when someone's just trying to be a dick. So it's like, you've got to be cognizant enough of that. But when you get to that point where you're leading with, everything is my fault, including the way this person's coming at me. I've done something to make them want to come at me too hard or whatever.
You will only ever get in your life what you absolutely must have. Your absolute obsession. Is it you that says your obsessions become your possessions? That is so true. And so getting people to understand that level of like, I must have this, until it is that, like whatever it is, if it's taking care of your wife, if it's doing something rad for your mom, if it's having a beach house, whatever it is, until you need that, like you need oxygen, you won't get it. It is going to demand so much of you. You're going to fall so many times. There's going to be so many obstacles. And unless it must happen in your life, one of them will make you stop. Like you said, you can't be for sale. Like if your will can be bought,
It doesn't make you a bad person, man. It really doesn't.
Right.
But if your will can be bought, you're just not going to get it.
I am ultra ambitious. And I told my wife, the only thing you can never ask me to give up is ambition. And at the same time, my marriage is my highest priority. It's my highest value. So I'm constantly balancing is she asking me to give up my ambition, or is she just reminding me that we've hit a moment where I need to put it first and I need to stop working for a day or 2 days, whatever, and really just give her my undivided attention? And as long as it doesn't feel like she's actually asking me to get rid of my ambition, then it's like, yeah, of course, because that is what I want for myself. It is the thing that's brought me the most value in my life, is my marriage, for sure.
Where does that ambition come from then?
I don't know. It's the one thing I wonder about in terms of like, okay, we're not blank slates. Was I just given ambition, like at a neurological level? Maybe, certainly possible. I've made it bigger and more all-consuming throughout my life. That is for sure. I have just enough stubbornness in me that growing up, when people told me I couldn't do something, part of my like, every time someone told me I couldn't do it, I would say, well, I'm going to do it bigger. You can't even do this, let alone that. Then I'm going to do this. And, we ultimately get to, I'm building the next Disney. So it's like,
it's externally driven then?
Some of it, for sure. Mm-hmm. But some of it is, everything in my life is driven by how something makes me feel. And I really believe all you have in this world is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself. So in that dark, quiet night, when you're all alone, do you feel good or not? And so I steer by that. And when I start losing sleep because something is stressing me out, or I think I handled something poorly, I have to correct that.
The number one question I get, and I get this question so much you can't imagine, how do I find my passion? The good news is, passion is not something that's handed to you. It is not a lightning bolt moment. It's another nice, simple mathematical equation. First of all, you need to identify your areas of interest. Everybody's interested in something. And I find the big problem is people stop themselves because they say, yeah, well, the thing that I'm interested in couldn't possibly be a business. So let's take video games back in the 80s. Back when everybody thought that video games were a joke, you're ruining your brain, it's like intellectual candy, kids get off the computer, go play outside, Nintendo's a joke, it's ridiculous. And then we have an entire industry now that's born up around video games that has made untold numbers of millionaires. I met one of the founders of Riot Games that created League of Legends. The guy is like, I don't know, 31, maybe younger, just crazy. They do $1 billion in revenue from microtransactions of things that are not essential to play the game. The game is totally free to play. You don't need to pay for anything. Imagine that for a second. You're in an industry where they don't need to buy anything to get full use of your game, and yet you do over $1 billion in revenue because they said, I love this. I like being around games. I like the competition of it. I think it's amazing. I'm going to find a way. I'm going to be inventive. I'm going to look for areas to add value. And so they have. And more people now watch esports, the finale of League of Legends, than watch the finales, I think, of all major sports combined. It's crazy. They fill arenas. It's absolutely bonkers. But that was somebody who said, this is something I love. It's something I want to be around. It is an area of interest. And I don't care if other people tell me that it can't be a business. It's what I want to be around. With enough ingenuity and enough forethought into what actually can be a business, because some things can't, you can really do something with something that's an interest. All right, so an interest, you need to gain mastery in it. During the process of gaining mastery, you'll find out whether you actually like that thing enough to become great at it. It is my belief, whatever it is you set out to do as a business, there should be one litmus test. You should be able to ask and affirmatively answer the following question. Do I want to know more about this than anyone else in the world? Don't get into something unless you plan to be the best. That's my piece of advice. I know that's not going to sit well with everybody. But if you want to have the passion to make something big, to make big change, it's got to be something that you believe in beyond reasonable doubt. It's got to be something you've just got to make happen. So ask yourself, do I want to know more about this than anyone else? Because you're going to have to get better at it than anyone else if you want to be excellent and deliver on the promise.
All right, there are very concrete habits that you can use, that I have used. Once you get your mind in the right place, once you believe that it can happen, this is what I did.
I worked out. Why? Because it helped me gain control of my mind. 1, it was micro credibility with myself every day. I said I was going to do something, I did it. 2, when you're suffering and you're willing to fight through it, you tell yourself a story that you're willing to pay the price to become what you want to become. And also, and this may be the most important reason each and every one of you should start working out, and it has nothing to do with living longer, because we could get hit by a meteorite, who knows? So I'm not even worried about that, but I am worried about this. When you watch your body transform, you get the loudest signal from your subconscious that you can change, that you can change anything you want, that you can change your bicep, your tricep, your quad, whatever it is that you want. Something that you literally could not do the day before, you can do today. And your mind sees that that's true. Your mind sees that something you couldn't pick up yesterday, you can pick up today. And it begins to ask itself, well, if that's possible, then what else is possible? Now, for me, finding my center was also a very important thing. So I work out first. The next thing I do without fail is meditate. I do a just breathe meditation where I'm simply trying to calm my mind. Then I do what I call thinkitating. During meditating, I get into an alpha wave state brain pattern, which enhances creativity and unique connections. I'm not worried about whether I'll ever think a unique thought. I am simply interested in the unique connections that I will make that no one else before me or after me will ever make, because their circumstances are different than mine. And that, to me, is what makes each of us a beautiful snowflake. Is we're all going to make connections that other people might not make. And so during thinkitating, I take advantage of a problem I'm trying to solve, I smash it together with my alpha wave state, and I see what comes out of it. I read obsessively, because I believe in one simple math equation: ideas in equal ideas out. And then I keep a list of the most important things I'm trying to accomplish. If you're trying to become something, you need to know what that something is.
You don't get skills because it looks good on a resume. You get skills because it lets you do the thing you want to do. So let's use sports as an example. It's just all too easy not to use it. So if you're in poverty and you're Lionel Messi, and you realize, actually, I think, who's the other one?
Cristiano Ronaldo.
Cristiano Ronaldo, thank you. He was in the grips of poverty. And nice, that's perfect. So Cristiano Ronaldo, in the grips of poverty, realizes that playing soccer is a way out for him. And so he goes and gets the skills. Why? Because if he can win on the soccer field, then he can actually elevate his family out of poverty. Like when you see that trail, it goes back to the Nietzsche quote. If you have a why, you can survive almost any how. So how am I going to get there? The amount of work that Cristiano Ronaldo has put in to become one of the greatest, if not the greatest football player of all time, it's inhuman. Anybody else would look at it and say, nope, not willing to do that. And fair enough. But it was somebody who said, if I gain these skills, it will let me dribble around people, score when other people can't score, galvanize a team around me, leverage it to be wanted by teams, to turn into financial resources, to make me famous so that I can get brand deals and things like that. All the things that he would need to do to pull himself out of poverty. Like this stuff isn't an accident. It's about skill acquisition. So there's another kid that had the same dream. I'm going to use soccer to get me out of poverty, and did nothing about it. Therefore did not have the skills, therefore could not elevate their family out of poverty, and looks at it like, well, this is all circumstance. It's not circumstance. It's cause and effect. It's how much energy do you put into actually gaining the skills, and did you gain them? Or did you just put in the energy and the effort thinking that should be enough to gain it, but you didn't actually gain them? So this is what, it's like the gift I want everybody to receive is you can get good at anything you set your mind to. But do you actually set your mind to it? Do you have that inhuman level of follow through? Do you keep pushing and fighting long after it stopped being fun, deep into boredom, because you have a why? You know why you're doing what you're doing, and you're just driving towards that. And when you have that, you can accomplish this extraordinary stuff. But I really think people now are doing it for the gram. You're doing it for the gram. You want to go to that thing and do it because it's like, oh, this is going to look good on my gram. And look, I've done that 100 times. I get it. But at the core of my existence is not that. At the core of my existence is I'm going to, in the amount of time that I have, I'm going to be acquiring skills.
I've always said that the most sinister thing about excuses is that they're real. Like you really do have reasons not to be successful, but now what? Like now what? Now what are you going to do? Like I remember I was giving a talk at Google, and one of the guys happened to be African American, and he said, "Tom, do you think it's harder for me as a black person in America to succeed?" And I said, "That seems
patently self-evident. Even just accepting that humans tend to gravitate towards those that look like them, what I call the school of fish phenomenon. You always see the same kind of fish with the same kind of fish. So being a minority, just by definition, is going to make things harder.
If you haven't read Angela Duckworth's book on grit, I highly recommend it. It is amazing. I'll give you some of the key takeaways. The biggest part about grit is sustained effort over time. If you lose interest quickly in something, once or twice, no big deal. It is what it is. You realize that it wasn't your thing. But if you lose interest over and over and over and over and over, and you always only enjoy the first 6 months of a business and then you want to move on, you lose interest very quickly, you need to work on developing your grit, being able to sustain that over time. Because building any business, you're going to encounter hard things. You need to be able to do those hard things, focusing on the hard things. In fact, I try to start every day with one of the hardest things, to get it out of the way, to remind myself that I'm willing to attack that. All right, you want to be able to persist through boredom and suffering. I told you guys that's one of my superpowers. Long after everybody else gives up because they're not having fun anymore, I'm still there banging away at it. That's really, really important in order to create momentum, to keep things moving, and to finally get them across the finish line. A lot of people are able to get something to the 50-yard line or maybe even the 1-yard line, but they just can't quite push it over the finish line. And that is the difference between somebody who's a wantrepreneur and somebody who ends up being successful the way that they want. They can get it across the finish line. All right, learn to tell the difference between a lack of grit and genuine disinterest. If you're not interested in something, you need to move on quickly. But like I said, if that becomes serial, you may have a problem. And if you're only good in the beginning, that's the sign that you lack grit. Only execution matters. Burn that into your nervous system. Get a tattoo. Do whatever you need to do to remind yourself, only execution matters. Thinking about it, feeling good about it, those are awesome. But if you have a vision of something you're trying to do, become, whatever, and you don't execute against it, and I don't need you to want to build a big business. If you tell me you want to be the greatest parent of all time, then I'm going to ask you, what are you doing to execute on that goal? What are you doing? How do you define it? What are your deliverables? What are the metrics by which you're judging yourself? And by the way, if you don't want a grand goal, you don't need one. But then say, what I'm trying to do is get centered. I'm trying to experience happiness. Even that, you can begin to look at ways that you can improve that. Now, I very much subscribe to the theory that the human animal is an active species, meaning it will forever be moving forward. I think that's a good thing. It's one of the most exciting things in my life. And I have 3 fears. 1, brain damage. That freaks me out. 2, losing my wife because, damn, that woman's cool. And then 3, I don't ever want to feel like I've hit the end of what I can do. I always want to feel like there's something more that I can learn and grow into.
What is that mindset of constantly working on yourself without judging yourself to a deeper level, without doing it in a way that always pulling you down, but always pushing you up? And you're doing that in your relationship. Whenever I watch relationship theory, I think the conversations you and Lisa have, incredible. So it seems like you're doing it in all areas of your life. Which area did it start in? Which areas did it evolve to? Let's just break that whole...
Yeah, so let's answer that question.
Yeah.
So where did it start and where did it go? So the honest answer is that, like many of the most amazing things in my life, they were born of misery. And I was deeply and profoundly unhappy, dissatisfied with who I was, what I was capable of, where I was in life, all of it. I was just really unhappy about it. Now, the one good thing is I've always met things like that with, and what can I do? And I have a bias towards action. And then I've cultivated that bias towards action, which is how it's gotten extreme and is permeated into every area of my life. Okay, so it starts with it's this dark place. This, like I said, I failed in film school. I didn't fail in film school. I graduated second in my class, but there was a failure that was so emotionally catastrophic that everybody else would have been like, oh, you got a B, like what's the problem? Sure, I got a B in the class, but I didn't walk away with a thesis film that I could use to get a job as a filmmaker. So for me, it was like, whoa, I just lost massively. So I'm, in this very dark place. I'm broke as the day is long. I can't afford furniture. I literally sit on the floor in my unfurnished apartment like that. Just it's a normal phase that people go through, but then put on top of that I'm feeling down and stuck, like I don't know where I'm going to go. Propensity towards action kicks in. I start reading. I'm learning about the brain, figuring out how much of this can I change. I realize I can change it. And then that change felt so good. And even let's do a thought exercise. This is for people listening because you're already there. But for anybody listening, And you're listening to Jay because you want to get there. You see something, which by the way, you feel when you're with him. It is real, and I love that about you. But like this sense of peace, like the normal slings and arrows of life, he's found a way to deal with. I won't say that he doesn't have them, but he's found a way to deal with it, and that's what you're looking for. So going into that, it's like, if you are in a dark place and you hear change is real, change is possible, doesn't that lift your mood? Don't you want that to be true? And once you allow it, because you have to allow it, once you allow that to lift your mood, and you're like, I feel better just by thinking I can change. That was huge for me. That was like moment one, was when I realized I actually can change. So this thing that feels like a death threat, this like smothering cloud of just like despair, it can clear away. And it immediately, and it's not like, oh, it went from gray skies to blue skies. It wasn't that immediate, but it literally immediately a lighter load, just because I realized I can change. So I was like, whoa, I can change. None of this is a death sentence. That's so like just amazing. That was enough to get me going. And people are always looking for, how do I have that energy? I'm depressed. I'm down on myself. How do I get the energy to push through? Man, you've got to find a way to find energy in that. You can change. So whatever position you're in right now, you can change, no matter what it is, no matter how horrific, no matter what you've been through, no matter what you've done. Like, there is a way out from under it. But part of it is allowing that sense of lightness to be there. So I allowed it.
The important thing here to note is that everyone needs an ego. Everyone needs self-esteem. Everyone needs to feel good about themselves. And the crazy thing, when you really stop and think about suicide, and this is a new obsession of mine, if you stop and think about suicide, what has happened? That person believes, falsely, but they believe that they'll never be happy again, that they'll never feel good about themselves again. And that's why it's referred to as a permanent solution to a temporary problem, because that will pass. But in that moment, it feels like it couldn't ever go away. So we need to find things that make us feel good about who we are. Because when you lose a sense of feeling good about who you are, life truly feels hopeless. So that's critical. And people often talk about, to stay away from an ego, to not pride yourself on things. But I'm telling you, that person prides themselves on not having an ego. And so it becomes what you pride yourself on is absolutely incredible. Now, don't make the mistake that I made. I used to want to be smart. When I talked about being the king of remedial jobs, it was because I wanted to put myself in situations where I was the smartest person in the room. And in doing that, I was always going into smaller and smaller rooms. But it felt so good to be right. And the problem was I was wrong a lot of the times. Now, when this one finally came to a head, my business partners, who were far smarter than I am in terms of IQ, processing data, which I define IQ as your ability to process data rapidly. They could process data very rapidly. And we would get into arguments and I would always lose, and it was very frustrating. And I remember one day, finally, I actually convinced them to do something my way. And I realized, oh, I just won the argument, but I know I'm wrong. And so now what? I've gotten what I thought I wanted. I finally won this victory. If I don't feel smart myself, at least I'm getting reflected back to me that I've solved the problem. And now I feel totally stuck. Because if I really want to move towards my goal of getting rich, it does not help to do things that I know are against the company just to be right. And in that moment, I realized what I had to do was switch my self-esteem from being right to pursuing the right answer faster than anyone else, and then putting energy behind that and being like, oh my gosh, Timmy came up with the idea, or it was Sally, and Sally, oh my gosh, it's amazing, and giving them so much energy to try to see it through because that's the right idea. And then I began to develop my reputation of being the guy that even if 3 seconds before that I'd been fighting for another idea, once I realized I was wrong, I would admit it. And it's amazing what reputation you can build around that, and it is way more effective for business.
What does the meditation process specifically look like?
Dead simple. So I use what I call Just Breathe. So it was born of Mark Divine's box breathing. At least he was the one that introduced it to me. So he preaches do it 4 equal parts. So you've got the inhale is the exact same length as the inhale hold, exact same length as the exhale, exact same length as the exhale hold. Now doing that made me feel out of breath. I just felt weird. So what I started doing was I'm going to maximize the pleasure in each part of the breath cycle. So for me, it happens to be a sort of medium inhale a very short inhale hold, a rapid exhale. I just let the air out. And then a very prolonged exhale hold. And that rhythm feels awesome. And I do that for 10 or 15 minutes and I can get into an alpha wave state. I feel calm, creative. It just feels awesome. That's one of those things that people that haven't tried meditation or tried it but never got to the part where it feels awesome, my heart breaks for them. It is a tool I rejected for so many years because it felt wussy to me. And remember, I'm the guy that had to learn to toughen up. So I feared that was like backwards momentum. And so finally when Mark Divine looked at me and was basically like, stop being an idiot and try this. And he's like this tough ass Navy SEAL. I thought, all right, I'm going to try. And then it changed my life.
I switched my self-esteem from being right and being smart to being the learner who was always willing to admit that he was wrong, identify the right answer, give credit to the person who thought of it, and put more energy behind it than anyone else. And that became my driver. Now, what did I do with that driver? I turned that change in attitude, along with my co-founders at Quest Nutrition, into building, as Vishen said, the second fastest growing company in North America, valued at over $1 billion. Every financial dream I'd ever had in my life come true. But at the end of the day, the only thing that mattered had nothing to do with the money. And it had everything to do with, we set out to build a business around value creation. We set out to actively ask one question: what would we do and love every day, even if we were failing? And that, for 3 very different reasons, ended up being attacking the pandemic of the body, trying to help people live a more beautiful life. And there were times where putting that value first meant that we did things that were less profitable. There were times where we put that value first and it was outright stressful to the company. But that was the driver. And that was the thing that actually allowed us to grow, because people could feel that this company was different. They could feel that we weren't after the sale. They could feel what we wanted was to help. And in today's world, leading with that, as you guys know, if you're at this conference, can have tremendous rewards.
If you're trying to march down a path of self-improvement without clarity, without a terrifying level of clarity, you're never going to make it. So start there. What do you want exactly? What skill, what trait, what ability, what belief, what are you trying to make yours? So once you identify that.
Notice he did not say a thing there. Like you said, right? Like you said, what ability, what trait, what quality. You didn't ever say what house, what car.
Lambo, yeah.
Right. It's important.
Yeah.
Because I think that's too much. I mean, when I remember first getting into sorry to cut you off.
Please.
I'm saying this because I think it's such an important point that you made, that you did not let that word even come into a list, and you named like 7 things and it didn't come in. Because when I started self-improvement, so much of what I heard in the West was always about a vision board of having stuff. And it was like, put a picture of that ideal house, put a picture of that car. And I've always struggled with that being the object of obsession. So I'm glad you didn't bring it up. And you can carry on or go on that or whatever.
Yeah, well, part of it is because I certainly don't want to be disingenuous. Like, there are also material things that I chase and am inspired by and all that, for sure. I just come at it from a like, what's the skill that I'm going to need, even if that ultimately is where I want to get. It's like, all of that stuff people will find, and God, I hope people have heard this 1,000 times. It's so transient. It is never going to fulfill you, right? But it's still fun. Go ahead, chase it, have fun. Like, I get it. But you will ultimately come back to something more meaningful, for sure. So once you know what you want, you have that level of clarity. Now it's about, okay, where am I in that? And that's where it requires that you have self-awareness to know where you are in developing that skill.
I love inspiration and motivation, but it is the neurological equivalent of candy. It's rad, it has its place, but everyone, because those just happen to be fleeting neurological states, you just have to find something that's way more grounded. You need a mission, you need a grand why, you need to know what it is. And this is not a discovery, it's a thing you decide. I decided. Now, because I tell it as a story, people think, oh, it was unavoidable. He meets this kid, Rashawn, and that coupled with all the people that he worked with at Quest, it's sort of inevitable that he decides that he's going to build impact theory and try to change culture to give everyone an empowering mindset. Yeah, well, literally a year before I decided to found impact theory, my mission in life was to end metabolic disease. So it's like you decide and then you point yourself at something. Nothing is ever going to feel right. Like, this is what I was put on earth to do. It won't feel that way until about a year or 2 years after you've been saying that's what you're going to do, that's what you're committed to, and actually acting in accordance with it. And then you'll be like, yeah, this actually is my mission.
Be transparent. It's a new world order. Man, when I was coming up, you didn't be transparent. You put a marketing message out. You spun that. Like, you tried to be as close to the truth as you could, but you didn't worry about transparency. But these days, consumers expect transparency. They want to know who you are. They want to know what you're doing. They want to know what it means to support you, because it's not enough that your product is good. They want to know that your company stands for something. But it's also incredibly meaningful to your employees. You want to keep top quality talent around for a long time. You want to make sure that they know what's going on in the company.
Somebody that wants to completely transform who they are, you have to change your identity. So who am I? I'm the smart guy. And that's how I thought of myself. Like, I thought of myself as being smart. And then the life slapped me around and I realized, oh, wow, I'm really actually not that smart. I just grew up in a small town. And so in my small town, I was smart enough. I was still never the smartest. But then I moved to LA and all of a sudden, people smarter than me were just like growing on trees. So I was like, wow, I really don't feel smart anymore. So that was like a hard adjustment. And so then putting myself into these smaller and smaller rooms was the solution. But I realized that I'd been sort of taken as a default value intelligence. Maybe it was the family I grew up in or the movies I watched, I don't know. But I just had this default that being smart was the thing everyone should chase. And then I realized, oh, I can actually change that. Not everybody values themselves for that. And so I could swap that out with something else. And I want people to understand that those things that are just deeply within you that seem as if they are innate human qualities, challenge them all. Some things you won't be able to change, but some things are far more malleable than you thought. And a lot of what you value comes down to what you repeat. And so just repeating myself, I'm the learner, I'm the learner, I'm the learner. It began to be my identity, and then rewarding myself emotionally when I did that, repeating it, rewarding, repeating, rewarding. Then it's like through that repetition cycle, it actually starts to be meaningful that you're the learner. And by the way, I was telling everybody, I'm the learner. I see myself as the learner. I'm the learner. I'm the learner. And because I was telling people, then I really felt the sense of congruence with wanting to act like the learner. And so when you say you're going to do something and you do it, you earn self-credibility. So now I've got this loop going. I said I was the learner. Here I am reading this book. Here I am being willing to admit when I'm wrong, seeking out knowledge, looking for disconfirming evidence. Like, I get to feel good about myself for that.
Take this superhero, Iron Man. The movie franchise is off the charts. And what is it? At the same time that you have people occupying Wall Street, you have them celebrating one of the richest people on the planet. Why? Because he dresses up like a superhero and he tries to save the world. People don't mind money. People don't mind that you want to create a beautiful lifestyle for you and your family. They don't mind people getting rich, but they care a lot about how you do it. They care a lot about what you do with it once you have it. Nobody likes Scrooge McDuck. Don't ever leak a photo of you swimming in your money. I promise it will not go well. But if you have a vision for how your company could make the world a better place, and you use social media to allow people to touch and be evangelized by your brand, if you're thinking, how can I make a product or a service that actually makes the lives better of the people that work at the company and the people who buy the product? If that's the question that you're asking, man, they will rally around you. And we live in this amazing time, and you've got to take advantage of that. And it really freaks me out when people think that we're like either the social movement is cresting or it's behind us. It's only gaining steam. The TV's going away. The mobile phone is becoming the television. Like, these changes are a one-way ticket to difference. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I just know it's not going to stop, and it sure as hell isn't going to go in reverse.
Only in the process of gaining mastery will you find passion. So to me, passion comes out of, it's kind of like love. I don't believe that love, it needs a different word. Unrequited love is a very different neurological state than reciprocal love. So if you have unrequited love, to me, that's something you really, like, I love singing, but I'm shit at it. So I have unrequited love. I love singing, but singing does not love me back. Now, I could go down the process of gaining mastery, and then I may find that I have a real passion for it. Because part of it's going to become, oh, I'm gaining this skill, and this skill of singing allows me to have an emotional impact not only on myself but on other people. I can make them feel good. I can change their mood. I can tell a story, whatever it is that you want to do with the music. But when you're able to do that and you're truly good at it and it has the outcome that you desire, then it can become a passion. But to get a passion, you've got to fight through just ridiculous amounts of boredom, fatigue, everything to truly become good enough at it that it's a skill that has utility.
People have got to reject this notion that they have to be protected from the outside and putting all their time and energy into that. Be the fucking change you want to see in the world. If you want to see people strong enough to withhold a better weight, then don't worry about trying to fix systems. Just can get tough. Watch how people respond to you. Watch how your kids look up to you. Watch how your family members look up to you. Watch how people turn to you and want help. We have an innate desire to get strong. We don't have an innate desire to have something else protect us. All of us. If two buttons, man. One of them is you're such a badass, nothing can ever hurt you. You get it. You know how to figure it out. You fight your way out of anything. Or a magic fairy will follow behind you and just waft things away. The terrifying thing is, this button, the magic fairy, is going to get pressed a lot more than this button. But this button, no one dies of suicide with this button. This button, race towards suicide and depression. And if you want to know why we're having a pandemic of that, and I don't want to cheapen it because it's largely microbiome and there's all kinds of health things that are going on, I'm not taking that away. But on the mental side of what's driving a lot of people not believing in that is we're just culturally reinforcing that like we're stuck, we're trapped, there's nothing we can do, that people don't understand that fulfillment has to be earned. You can't tell someone to just love themselves. You have to tell them how they earn self-respect. You have to tell them that doing hard that you don't want to do and doing it anyway, that's exactly how you gain self-worth. You can't just tell someone to feel worthy. And man, I want to more than the next person. Like I spend an inordinate amount of my time every week talking to a camera, trying to help people, to touch their lives for real. Like my wife and I made so much money, we could have actually bought an island and retired and never worked again. But that's not what I want. Like, I want that fulfillment. I want to do hard shit. I want to touch people's lives. I want to lift them up. I actually want to transform and change them.
The single most important part in learning to be honest with yourself is to accept that you must have self-esteem. And the problem is most people build their self-esteem around something stupid. So most people build their self-esteem around being right, being good, being smart, being worthy, and they see all of those as permanent traits. And so anything that challenges them being smart, which is my big one, oh God, even to this day, if I really want to get into a bad place, I'll just go hang around people that are just legitimately smarter than me and then focus on how cool being smart is. Now I can be around them when I value myself for being the learner, but the second I let myself slip into just wanting to be cool for being smart, then being around those people is like getting kicked in the face. It sucks, man. And so I went through this phase in my life that I call the king of remedial jobs phase. And so this is post film school, post like realizing that I don't have talent. I just need to be smart, man. I just need to build myself back up by being smart. And so I would apply for jobs. Like I sold video games retail, and I sold insurance door to door. I did anything that I could where I knew that the person interviewing me at some point during the interview was going to say, "Why are you applying for this job? Like, you're too smart for this." And be like, "I'm right where I need to be," which is crazy and sad, but absolutely true. And so I did that for a couple years. And in that phase, I just didn't want my intelligence to be challenged. So flash forward now, I'm working with these two entrepreneurs. They hire me as a copywriter. I'm in an entrepreneurial environment for the first time. And they're clearly smarter than me. That isn't even up for debate. And I'm arguing with them for this idea because I needed to win. I couldn't take another time where it's like, they're smarter than me. So I was like, all right, I'm going to win on this idea. And somewhere in the argument, I realized I was wrong. And there was a voice in my head screaming, "You're wrong, dude. You are wrong. You know you're wrong. Shut up. Like, stop pushing for this. What are you doing?" And I kept going, and I finally like whittled them down, and they finally just gave up. And so they said, "Yep, we'll do it your way. Fine, whatever." And right then and there, it's the one time in my life that was truly a lightning rod moment where my life can be divided before and after. And that moment was realizing that I was telling everybody that I wanted to get rich, but the way I was acting was like I just wanted to feel smart. And I thought, hey, no judgment. I'm totally cool. Whichever it is, like we can craft a life where that will be wonderful. So
if what you really want is to just be smart and to feel smart all the time, you have to quit. You've got to get out of this environment because they make you feel stupid all the time. And that's not a great place to be. Feeling badly about yourself all the time for any reason, even if it's self-inflicted, it's not a bad scenario or it's not a good scenario. You've got to get out of it. So I was like, okay, so that's option one, get out of this scenario, go back to being the king of remedial jobs. Or if you actually want to get rich, start acting in accordance with it. Start making decisions based on that. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to give up my self-esteem. I'm going to have to like stop worrying about feeling good about myself. And I was like, ooh, that is clearly a losing proposition. There's no way to come in and feel horrible every day and think that I will have the energy to see this through. So I was like, God, what else could I do? And I was like, well, I guess I could build my self-esteem around something that is sort of impervious to being around people that are smarter than me. And what would that be? Being the learner. And I thought, okay, well, I could choose to do that. I could choose to build my self-esteem around being not right, but finding the right answer. Not being smart, but working hard to learn. And so that became just like the core of my existence. I decided in that moment, I'm going to start valuing myself for how rapidly I can admit when I'm wrong. How much I learn, how much time and energy I put into learning. And once I switched that and I switched my identity and my behaviors around to being the learner, then all of a sudden, everything changed. And that's when I went on hockey stick growth. Because all of a sudden, if we were arguing and I realized you were right, I'd be like, dude, he's right. You're totally right. I see it. Oh my God, thank you so much. And so I started earning a reputation of I never just backed into a corner. I never argued for something just because it was my idea. I was legitimately on the hunt to find the right answer. And so now I'm getting the internal feedback of, hey, you said that you were going to always focus on being the learner. You're doing it. You said you'd always admit when you're wrong. And I would try to shorten that timeline down. So I wasn't like taking an hour to finally admit it or even 3 minutes that I was trying to get to it. Like, dude, if I realize I was wrong, 3 seconds, 30 seconds max, like I'm, just finally saying it. Look, you're totally right. I'm with you. Yep, I see it. And then the world was like, whoa, working with this guy is awesome. He's not trying to take credit for other people's ideas. He will change on what he was saying in a heartbeat when he fights for what he believes in, but the second you can convince him, he's convinced and then he moves on. And it just became a really awesome environment.
The reason that Quest went so fast wasn't just because we had done something to our minds and gotten to the point where we were so angry that we were going to push this forward no matter what. It was understanding the timing of the marketplace and the technologies that were emerging. And the technology that was emerging in 2009, when we first started thinking about the company, everybody thought Facebook was a joke. Everybody thought it was a huge distraction. And what we understood was it was just a megaphone. We didn't pass judgment on it. We just knew it was a megaphone. And it was a free megaphone. And if we could give them reason to say something good within a couple of minutes of an interaction with us, they could have a global audience and tell people about that. So we saw that the timing was right there. And we also understood that people want to have impact.
How do you think about failure then?
Not trying. For me, like to not have the audacious goal, to not really give it a real shot. And I know I'm constantly gut checking myself for am I playing at building the next Disney or am I actually building the next Disney? That means something to me. So if I get to the end of this and the world is clapping for me and they're like, oh my God, you're so amazing and look how far you went.
I don't think people have researched cognitive behavioral therapy nearly enough. Pattern interrupting is like everything. Get better at pattern interrupting than LeBron is at shooting. Like you just have to be a ninja. Like you've got to be so hardcore. You've got to know about how to do that with yourself. So if I have a negative thought that's recurring, I just tell myself, nope, you can't think this anymore. So, and every time it will come up because I can't stop myself from it popping up into my conscious mind, but you absolutely can control how the next thought goes. The next thought can be, and here's what I'll do with a negative thought. That's so rad. I'm so glad this negative thought appeared in my mind because that reminds me to be grateful for the fact that I'm friends with Jay Shetty, or that reminds me to be grateful for the fact I have a marriage that is so insanely cool that like I legitimately some days have to stop myself from just curling up in a ball with her and just chilling all fucking day. Like that is, I'm super stoked. Even now, Jay, it's so funny. I had to stop and think, wait, I'm going through this list of things that I'm grateful for. What started this? And I'm like, oh yeah, the negative thought. Like that actually just happened to me right now. Yeah. So you can imagine in real life when like you train yourself, every time the negative thought kicks up, don't sit in the emotion of the negativity that it will bring. Instead, use it as a habit loop trigger to think about something you're grateful for. And at first, it feels so awkward, and it's like the negative thought just keeps coming back. But if you're diligent and suddenly negative thoughts become a habit loop trigger to gratitude, to positivity, to repeating your rules about, I don't allow myself to think things that tear me down, so I'm not gonna think about that. Even just saying that crowds out that thought and telling other people that, hey, this is what you're doing. It is unbelievable. But this is where I'm saying I'm literally just a patchwork of all these like tools and techniques that allow me to protect myself from negative self-talk, from anxiety, from depression. I don't think I've ever officially been in depression, but I've been super close enough to know the feeling of staring into the void, which I don't think is accurate. It feels like the void is collapsing in around you and just everything is meaningless and it is all utterly hopeless. And I've had just enough of a glimpse of how hopeless that is to get where people are in those moments. But anxiety, that I've been in the thick of. So that one I know, and I've used CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, to do interrupts on that. I have a very well-developed negative voice, so I have had to use tools and techniques to stop that. I never would have become a successful entrepreneur if I couldn't learn to self-soothe. And at one point, that was what I would have said was my secret power. That my secret power in business was I can self-soothe faster than anybody else.
You're big on learning a lot of skill sets, right? What would you say has the highest, what skill set has the highest upside, highest return?
The baseline thing people have to have is emotional resilience. So you have to, and this to me is a skill, you have to learn how to emotionally recalibrate. So when I was the kid in the server room, and there was a whole bunch of people farther ahead in their entrepreneurial journey than I, and they all heard the same message about you can be a partner, and none of them did anything with it. I started asking, why aren't they doing anything with it? And I realized the answer was I could self-soothe faster than they could. And so, yeah, it hurt when I was told I was an idiot. That really sucked, especially hearing it from someone you really respect. But I decided to not spin out of control, not waste 3 days being hurt by it, but instead to recenter and just ask, are they right? Because if they're right, there's something to learn here. And if they're not right, just move on. And if they are right, learn the lesson. And so I just slowly started collecting it and the lessons. And the image I started thinking was, whenever somebody throws an insult at you, you have two options. You can let it hit you in the head, or you can raise your defenses and deflect it. And your defenses are the psychological immune system. They're real, I'm not making that up. So all of us have this thing that comes to our aid when somebody says something that hurts you. Then you're like, oh, well, they're mean anyway, they're a jerk, they're a bully, whatever, I don't have to take them seriously. And so that makes you feel better, and you believe maybe that they're being cosmically punished in some way. Being a bully is its own punishment and all that. So, and like that allows you to relax. And they've done studies that show people with the highest level of self-delusion are the happiest. So there really is something to it. But the people with the highest level of self-delusion are usually not the ones that go the farthest, because they don't stop to recognize where they really are, to own the pain of that. So I thought, okay, instead of raising my defenses, I'm going to lower my defenses. I'm going to let that rock hit me in the head, because at my feet now is actually a nugget of gold. And I'm going to pick up that nugget of gold and form it a lesson that the person is throwing at me. And here's the thing to realize. When people really come at you, they're really trying to hurt you, they have sinister intent, they're going to come at you with something that's true. Nobody comes at you with the stuff that's not real. They're gonna hit you with like the thing that you're the most secure about in the world. So even the people with the gravest of intent are the ones that are giving you the most powerful gift, because you may be blind to it, or maybe you didn't want to acknowledge it. But if you can let it hit you as much as it hurts, then bend down, pick it up, and learn from it, now you can do something.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag Believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video, because you are awesome. If you want 10 more amazing rules from Tom Bilyeu, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe. I'll see you there.
You do not need to think that you are anything special. It is absolutely okay for you to be hopelessly average. Why? To me, the most